Welcome to Public Space, a community dedicated to supporting individuals who have experienced religious trauma or find themselves in between and are looking for self-God as well as community. We exist beyond the four walls of colonized religion. Here, we create a safe and vibrant space where members can explore and share spirituality, stories, art, and intellectual inquiry through critical dialogue. Join us as we embark on a journey of healing, self-discovery, and creative expression. Together, we will foster a supportive community that empowers individuals to reclaim their voice, embrace their unique journeys, embody a Path-Maker Archetype, and find solace and strength in the company of like-minded individuals.
For the Winter Solstice gathering in 2024 into 2025, the community can reflect and speak about the following themes and ideas presented by a shaman in Journey.
Orpheus Suite Sixth, Orpheus Return by Philip Glass, performed by Paul Barnes, is a stunning modern interpretation of the Orpheus myth. This piece comes from Philip Glass's opera Orphée, based on Jean Cocteau's 1950 film of the same name, and the suite distills its most emotionally challenging musical themes into a minimalist piano composition. Glass's music captures the emotional depth of Orpheus's journey with repetitive, meditative patterns that evoke the cycles of longing, loss, and redemption. Orpheus' return symbolizes the resolution and transformation of Orpheus, offering a moment of profound beauty and contemplation. This musical piece mirrors the introspective nature of Orpheus's mythic descent and return, making it a great companion for reflecting on the themes of rebirth, the inner abyss, and self-discovery. The myth of Orpheus, particularly his descent into the underworld, resonates deeply with the symbolic themes of winter and the dark night of the soul.
Winter is often seen as a time of death and dormancy in nature. The earth retreats into itself, and the vibrant life of spring and summer seems to vanish. Similarly, Orpheus descends into the underworld, a place associated with death, shadow, and the unseen. This descent mirrors our inner journeys during the winter months, when we are often compelled to turn inward, reflecting on our shadows and hidden truths. Orpheus enters the underworld to retrieve Eurydice, risking everything to confront loss, despair, and the limitations of his own power. His journey parallels the dark night of the soul, a spiritual crisis where one feels disconnected, lost, or overwhelmed by inner darkness. In the same way, winter invites us into an abyss of stillness and reflection, a necessary confrontation with our own fears, regrets, and limitations. The abyss represents the depths of the unconscious, where we face our unprocessed emotions, forgotten dreams, and aspects of the self we have neglected or suppressed. Orpheus' journey reminds us that such a descent is both harrowing and necessary. Winter's quiet and isolation create the conditions for this introspection, forcing us to face these parts of ourselves.
Though Orpheus ultimately loses Eurydice, his journey transforms him, offering profound lessons about love, loss, and acceptance. Similarly, the midnight of the soul can be a period of profound transformation, where we shed old patterns and prepare for renewal. Just as winter gives way to spring, the inner work we do in our abyss sets the stage for a rebirth into a more authentic and integrated self. In this framework of thinking, autumn represents the descent, as the light fades and we begin to confront the coming darkness. Winter embodies the full underworld experience, a time to embrace stillness, shadow, and inner transformation. Spring symbolizes the rebirth, as the seeds planted in our inner abyss begin to sprout, giving rise to new life and awareness. Summer celebrates the flourishing of this renewed self, a time of expression and outward vitality.
The Orpheus's myth, when seen through the lens of winter, teaches us that the journey into the inner abyss is not one of despair, but of potential. By embracing the darkness, we prepare for the light, a deeper, truer self waiting to emerge.
Welcome, everybody, to the final public space gathering for 2024. Today, we're going to be talking about the winter solstice. And as we have seen in the presentation, using the classical song, as well as the myth of Orpheus to portray this kind of process of a journey through, the winter solstice. And how do we see this spiritually? And so, based on the presentation, what do you guys think? Anything comes to mind when thinking about going inward, like the spiritual concept during this time of winter?
I like how the seasons were interpreted. So, like autumn, it represents like us preparing into the winter, which is that inner kind of like we go to our inner selves, basically. So to those dark parts of ourselves to then come back in spring to like that rebirth. And then you'll have, like the rest of the year, which is summer. So you're kind of like enjoying basically what you planted. So I like the idea of seeing December in that way because for me, it's like I don't enjoy winter as much because of the cold and things like that. Like I don't walk as much during the winter, even if I'm like dressed appropriately, for the weather. But it's a little more gloomy. It's a little more gray. And of course, like depression, or I should say seasonal depression kicks in for many of us. And sometimes it's just hard to, kind of get together or share space with other people because like it's like we're all going through something. So yeah, I liked it.
All right. Thank you for that. Just saying, yeah, you're right. It does bring back a lot of memories for me in terms of childhood, growing up, even interesting enough along the terms of religious trauma. Like anyone that knows me close enough or long enough knows Christmas was one of my most favorite holidays taking place during the time of winter solstice. And for me, it was a very pivotal moment on my spiritual journey to decide to not partake in that particular holiday in a particular way anymore. And that in itself is traumatic, like even to this day, babe, I listen to Christmas music, like we have this thing where we like the melodies, and especially when it's cold, and these things are assigned to, childhood memories, like I was telling you the other day that we were reminiscing on our time with our grandmother. And it was only like a year, but during those times, that time we got to experience 4 seasons with her, and we never really thought about that, and the winter season was incredible, as we remember it, of course, as a child. And being across the street from Lincoln Center, the music, the classical music, they would do the Nutcracker, and just to hear the music, and my grandmother would take me, and it was just amazing. So to tie this together, like it's religiously traumatic for me deeply because we have so many good emotional memories tied to this holiday, But then there's a layer of conscious awareness that, through my own research and investigating and learnings and coming to terms with, that we had to decide that we couldn't practice this holiday and these rituals in this manner because of their deeper meanings, and we didn't want to contribute to that anymore. And so we had to change our way of celebrating the winter solstice, which was a little odd at first because, this holiday and its rituals has become global when you think about it. Countries that are not even predominantly Christian practicing celebrate Christmas, and they enjoy the merging of Jesus, regardless of what their faith is, like they're with it. Um, and so we see like this interesting kind of veil, if you would, theopoetic veil, that on one hand you see or appear to see this illusion of happiness and coming together and love and forgiveness and warmth during during a cold season. Like, warmth is a gift, and people are persuaded to be more giving and be more accepting and do things that they normally wouldn't do, like give away things, like give away money, or all kind of stuff is tied to this, right? And then you have a layer of religious belief that, a known Christ-like figure, important figure to at least three religions that are global, um, are believing that their figure, their teacher was born, on December 25th. And that December 25th is also Christmas Day, and that we're believing that, this religious figure was born on Christmas Day, so you have a merging of things, but it's not taught that way, it's not expressed that way, and it's not accepted that way. People accept it the way they want to accept it, right? People say, well, I don't celebrate Christmas that way, or I don't believe in Jesus that way. Or we can do this all day, and it's us reinterpreting symbols. And so with all that said, all we really are trying to get at is that we respect other people's beliefs, but we were just sharing how our own personal experience has led us to certain beliefs, certain ways of seeing the world, that lead to certain ways of engaging with the world, that also have an economic value to it as well. Instead of going into deep debt during this season, which 90% of people will and already are in, you know, we're just choosing not to, you know what I mean? Like, not feeling guilty to go into this deep debt to please children that are not really going to be pleased within hours of opening their gift. On the majority, this holiday has become more than just, being humble and grateful. It's become something monstrous, right? Some would agree. I don't think everybody would agree because, again, it's such a great holiday, right? Who could really raise these challenges towards such a great holiday? Who could deny Santa Claus, and gift giving and cocoa and mistletoes and, all these things? Is we rarely stop to think about, is there another way to practice or live during this time of the year? It's just weird. You see a lot of like Coca-Cola for Christmas advertisements that are global. I saw a Thailand advertisement that had the Christmas Santa Claus for Coca-Cola on it. I just find that a little weird, like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to like go into like a crazy like dispute about it, but I'm just saying, like, these things, they pushed me to think harder, think deeper, and really just push myself to decide for myself and my family, is this how we want to move forward? Is this what we want to instill? Is these the values that we want to instill in our children, the next generation? Is this how we want to pass it down to them? Is this part of breaking the generational cycles? Is this part of decolonizing? So these are the things that we think about. It's really beyond right and wrong at this point, right? Like we got neighbors and they're more than likely going to celebrate Christmas how they're going to celebrate Christmas. And it's not wrong, right? It's great, right? Even like for cultures like Puerto Ricans, Boricuas, right? They celebrate three kings. So in their culture, they get two Christmases. They get the colonizers December 25th, and then they get their day in January, right? Where they celebrate the three kings. And so you have like these breakups. Even years ago, babe, we were when we were living in the Bronx, the neighbors uh, invited us with love and openness to their Christmas gathering. And it turned out there was a ritual that we just didn't know about. And they were passing around this baby Jesus, and was like pushed to kiss this baby Jesus. And I
We
mean,
had to be in line.
yeah,
And
like
we
I
just
didn't
looked
want
at
to
each
be
other like
really awkward.
flabbergasted.
Yeah, like what the
Like,
honestly in my mind, I was like, babe, what the fuck you signed us up for? Like, this is crazy. But I didn't want to like slap the doll out of her hand or something. So I kissed the doll. And the doll kept going, like it was okay. Like, and just thinking about stuff like that, like it's not traumatizing for me, but it was more hilarious than anything because it's like, where did this shit come from? Like,
wait, it's interesting because to add on to that, if I might, or maybe that like other parties, there was something that was related to it where we didn't know and we just thought it was just a regular celebration. But for that part, it was a learning experience too, because we would think it was just for me, my ignorance, it was just like the Virgen de Guadalupe. But it turns out that for Christmas around that time, it's the celebration of baby Jesus when he was alive, before the resurrection months later.
yeah, that is very interesting. Again, like you go to different cultures and they celebrate different aspects of a myth or a story. They're celebrating different times. Like you have the emphasis of celebrating the youthfulness of the birth of Christ. And then you have the focus of Christ being sacrificed. And then you have the returning of Christ, which brings even more hope, right? Overcoming death. So like not everyone's really practicing all the same. It's the same myth, but they're focusing on different aspects of it, which I find very interesting around the world. This is not just here in the Western culture. Like, just parallel to this is the spreading of American Western philosophy and ways of being, right? This colonization, if you would. And you see that it's really spread around the world successfully. Like it's been adopted and accepted in a lot of places, and it's fascinating to me. That proves like it's not a right or wrong. It's just a why do people attach themselves to this?
Like I would say, it has become predominantly commercialized, but this has been years, generations. You know what I mean? Where this has been the case, where this holiday, these celebrations, they have been commercializing them in a way where people might feel guilt trip to participate as well, even if you don't have the means to afford gifts and things like that. You have like a lot of, I would say, like the lower class, um, to, if let's just say, for example, going into church and stuff like that, they may not afford maybe a car, maybe higher education, certain things, but they'll afford to buy the best outfit for maybe that sermon or that, Sunday service kind of thing. So it's like we have lost ourselves to really think about what is really truly the purpose of these things. What is the meaning of this? Like, are we going to continue doing things because we feel like it has been part of society? And so if a neighbor on the right is doing it, neighbor on the left is doing it, then I got to do it because I don't want to be the odd man out. It's just like the conversation we had with funerals. Why do people wear black? And then, of course, that goes back to like the Roman times and the Greeks and the togas and these things. But it was more based on the men. And so like certain colors, what they represented, but black, how it represented, like this higher class kind of thing. So then I'm like, it's just so crazy. Like we do things and we don't question it. Just like the idea of having a Christmas tree. Yes, it's beautiful. You decorate it however you want. But it's like, what is the meaning of it? Like we just can't keep saying, well, because this has been a tradition and this, but why has it been a tradition? No one wants to go there because it's working for them. You don't want to ruin something that has been with them since they were children. So like you mentioned about your upbringing with your grandma, like everyone has a memory or a set of memories. It's hard for them to depart from. So it's like for me, my mom, her birthday is Christmas Eve. And so I don't really remember celebrating Christmases here in the US, but we would travel to DR. And so, like we would stay there through January, whatever. And it was a lot different, right? Compared to like out here. Like, yeah, there's still lights and things like that. But her birthday was more like emphasized for that time. And then later on, like years after, then we then try to implement, both things, Santa Claus and all these other things. But it's just like, you're giving me too many things. Like, what is it? And then I remember that time that we were over there. And then I'm like, wait a minute. How is Santa coming here if there's no snow? Like, how am I going to hear him? Like, and they're like, oh, you're going to hear him. And I remember I heard like a slam. It was something that was on the ceiling. And later on, I'm like, that had to be a cat, some animal, or somebody just jumped on the damn roof. And they said, oh, those are the reindeers they got here and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm going to go to bed. And I go to bed. I laid out stuff because they also believe that, I think someone mentioned something about donkeys. So they was like, yeah, just leave, something out in water and they're going to drink it. And then the morning after, I guess no one collected it. And I'm like, no one came. Like, but the presents are here. So I was confused as hell. So I know there were so many confused kids. Or the idea of writing letters to the post office with a list of the toys you wanted. And I remember I did that and I didn't get anything. I got nothing from it. So then I'm like, yo, this thing is a scam. Like, I don't know. Like little by little, I started to piece it together without people telling me. And then once I found out that Santa's not real, and let's not forget the sitting on the lap thing. That's another one. We frown upon strangers, right? It's inappropriate for a stranger to hold your kid and place your child on their lap, right? But it's okay for Santa to do it. And he's not a pedo. It's okay for him to do it on the holidays. But in other times, it's not okay. No one can do that. So you can dress up as Santa during winter and, do that whole thing where you line up with Santa, but you can't do that in the summertime. Don't you dare dress up as Santa trying to have kids sit on your lap for a picture, because now that's a problem. Like, you see, like, it's just it is so, what do you call it? It's all a business. Like, it's all business here. Like, if you really think about it, and then you overspend, none of that comes back to you. There is no ROI in this. And then for the next year, you're going to have to make sure and keep in mind the presents that you got last year so you don't repeat them too. And then we don't even think about the workers around this time of the year. Can you imagine working somewhere and all you hear is the most wonder the whole day, like a playlist, and then that
Mhm.
or the what is it? With Michael Jackson playing.
Mariah
Like
Carey
this, we
too.
don't think about the workers that have to deal with these things or people returning presents, like the stress. I don't think a lot of them enjoy it. Like it's just work. It's just like I hate this time of the year. While everyone else is out here spending their money, I have to work here, do extra hours, and it's like you're like in this loop, just on repeat, constant repeat, listening to the same things. I don't know.
Steven, you got any thoughts?
Um, yeah, nah, like around this time of the year, they got like this meme with like Mariah Carey, she's de-thawing and shit, getting ready to sing. Um, yeah, I think my journey with Christmas is very much linked with you guys too, because that's almost when I started like that's when I gave it up too, due to the theological implications of it. Um, I just didn't see the need for it either. Just like I'm not like yeah, like just the need to spend extra capital, spend extra money. I'll be honest, like that's one of my main drivers now. Like as like I'm like, bro, I don't want to spend extra money around this time of the year, especially when I'm building. Like I'm not gonna waste. I just see it as a waste. If I want to give people gifts, I just give it to them out of the spontaneity of my heart throughout the year. Like, I try not to unless like, unless like it's really organic, like, okay, like I really have been wanting to get this person or an individual this particular thing. And sure, if it finds itself convenient, then maybe I'll get it. But I try not to buy into the capitalism of or the merger of like Christ and capitalism, especially during this time of the year. Um, this just not worth it. But w- for the sake of some family members that we live with that still do enjoy the holiday cheer, we participate to a degree, to a degree of whatever our family wants to, like since we're here, like Grizel's parents, um we participate a little, but we don't go any further with like the Secret Santa stuff and all that extraness. Um yeah, that's about it with the like as far as Christmas. um and and also, like I don't have the same, as you could say, I don't have the same community either, that I had before. So that also does change things too, whether it's the Vidals, Jesus, Stephen, and them. Like there's been a severing there. So I don't. Yeah, the same people that were around are not around anymore. You know. So yeah, it's just not the same. Not to sound mad morbid and shit, but like, um, yeah, it's just not the same. But around this time in particular, um, like you were saying before with the solstice, um, yeah, I've always associated winter, even since I was younger, with like heartbreak, loss, just always this time of year. But for me, it would begin like it would begin really like in the fall, like the late fall, like November. kind of like my Scorpio season heading into the. I've just always associated the end time of the year with um kind of like a collapsing internally, not in a defeatist way, but just just going in, and just a lot of emotional self-reflection with Christmas. Not sorry, not Christmas, but the solstice in and of itself this time of year. Um, I could say that now that I'm in my 30s, it's a little different in which because I have goals and because I have things that I'm working on. It doesn't, and I'm married. Um, it doesn't feel as gloomy as it used to per se because I have a sense of stability. But yeah, given where I'm going, it's not that bad, because like I have a sense of vision. I know where I want to end up. When I was younger, things were just aimless, so it's about that. But um yeah, and I think even like a few things that you guys mentioned in the naked journey, like the severing, um in particular, I have like that has come to mind within this year. Um, this year in particular, where I look back at where I look back, I guess at the things or the people I had, like was it naive, versus who I am now, who's far more self-aware, you know, more present with certain things. Um, I guess in to conclude my point of the solstice, um, like I'm just alone, not lonely but alone, like and I've been working with just accepting that for what it is, accepting that for what it is. Sometimes I am curious about the why, as I usually am, but for the most part, just really taking it as it is what it is. But one thing that I am always particularly concerned about, whether it's in the forefront or the back of my mind, is themes of restoration. Like are there limits to restoration? How far can something be restored? Once it's kind of like broken up, shattered up. So yeah, like that's like to link that to when you guys were talking about the severing. Yeah, I think that was one thing that was like coming to mind when you guys were talking about the severing was like, yeah, there's severing, but is there also restoration, post severing, or do certain parts become restored and other parts remain severed?
Hey, everybody. This is Dr. Waldron. Just want to take this moment to welcome you again to Public Space and remind you of how this community is dedicated to supporting individuals like you and me who have experienced religious trauma or find themselves in between or looking for self or God, as well as community. We exist beyond the four walls of colonized religion. Here, we create a safe and vibrant space where members can explore and share spirituality, stories, art, and intellectual inquiry. Join our newsletter. That way you can stay up to date on the journey of healing, self-discovery, and creative expression. Together, we'll foster a supportive community that empowers individuals to reclaim their voice, embracing their unique journeys, and find solace and strength in the company of like-minded individuals. Yeah, just to piggyback off what you're saying, thank you for your contribution, by the way. Amazing insight and reflection. Um, yeah, the episode, The Severing, The Naked Journey, uh, that part you're talking about, we're referring to reconstruction, right? How do we reconstruct out of deconstruction, right? And so the severing is about the deconstruction of boundaries, relationships, ideas. And then we go a step further and, like you're mentioning, try to inspire people to think about reconstruction. And that's very important because it's very easy to, as you already may know, um, highlight and pinpoint the problems of things. But it's a lot more difficult to come up with some sort of solution, some sort of method or approach to move forward. Another thing you said, which I thought was interesting, was when something is broken or shattered, right? And it's interesting because that's just one way of breaking things. You have to really look at the context of how it was broken, right? For me, for example, right? Um, this season, we have dealt with a lot of astrologically, fire sign people, right? Leo, Sagittarius, and Aries. And fire signs, if you look at the element of fire, can you really reason with fire? Can you plea with fire? Please don't burn my house down. Please don't here and burn me. Fire just spreads. It burns whatever it touches, right? And so when we think about severing ties, for example, with a fire sign per se, we have to think about how do we separate or disattach, decouple from that fire element, right? Because fire will respond more than likely like fire does in a more violent, set maybe ablaze, enraged, fury, because there's some sort of misunderstanding. And the misunderstanding in nature is that fire doesn't think, fire just acts, right? And we see this in wildfires. You can't plead with a fire. Please don't burn down this group of shrubs or these ancient trees. The fire is just going to burn. There's no compassion, there's no morals, there's no discipline with fire. Fire cannot contain itself, right? And so, knowing these things, we have to be conscious of how we sever ties and sever relationships with not only people, places, or things, but ideas that may be like fire or spreading like fire. And maybe, I'm alone on this, or maybe a lot of people agree, but colonization is like fire. It's like a wildfire that we cannot contain. It just blazes on and it burns anything and everything in its path with no remorse, no consideration, no compassion, no regret, right? And so, when we think about how do we reconstruct after dealing with or severing from something so destructive, right? Because you mentioned broken or shattered as if a relationship could be theopoetically a vase, let's say, right? But not all
Mhm.
relationships are like a vase. You know what I mean? Like it looks different depending on what components make that relationship. So when we look at it, we can't just say, "Oh, I broke a tie with this person." Did it really break though? Was it burnt? Was it poisoned? Was it cut? Like we got to think about these things in its context because that does determine how do we reconstruct moving forward. And that was one of your I feel like your highlighted questions, for group and community to think about. Like how do we reconstruct not only ourselves but our connections with people, ideas, rituals, customs, society, families, you know, it's all delicate, right? It's all different, right? One you can maybe like a vase go, the other you have to burn, the other one you got to drown, the other one you got, like it depends on how you see I gotta sever this. Like, how can I truly disattach myself from this? Like, your life's on the line. Because a lot of us in this community know abuse very well. People will exploit and push that abuse so far to the point where you feel like you're breaking and you feel like enough is enough. I can't deal with this person no more. Like, they're not listening, they're not reasoning, they're not, being compassionate. They're just being like theopoetically fire. This very one-way force, right? It's not a two-way force. It's not a give and take. It's a, I'm just gonna take, and I'm gonna take however I like, you know. And when we deal with people like that, it's very abusive. It's spiritually abusive, religiously abusive, psychologically abusive, and even sometimes to the extent of physically abusive. Like, we see this in domestic violence relationships or scenarios. Um, and so, like, these are great points to really reflect on, especially during the winter solstice, this darker time, to deal with these, as you said, morbid, but more unconscious. That's why they appear so dark to us. It's unconscious, like it's there and we're unaware of it, you know. And this is a time where it calls for everyone to be more vulnerable. And if you have a hard time being vulnerable, or you haven't been practicing rituals all year to be vulnerable enough, then, what do you really expect to get from this kind of approach or winter solstice? It's going to be the same stuff. Nothing's going to change. And like you said, this is the time of the year for transformation, just as much as Scorpio season. Winter is all about transformation. Think about it. Things die, but it doesn't truly die because they come right back in the spring. So it's a transforming. Like, we look like one thing, during this time of the year, and we look like this during a different time of the year. It doesn't make us different so much. We're just the same thing. We just are appearing different because of our relationship with the environment, nature, right? These larger processes and cycles of the universe. This is a time not for ego, but a time for, putting the ego down in a way and saying, what is more reasonable? What is more humanly possible? That is where we start finding values of fairness. When we say, what is fair? What is enough? Enough is whatever you feel is enough. That's a very relative notion. Like, there is no set amount of what's balanced or what's enough. It's all different and relative for everybody, and all you can really do is try your best that when you create these boundaries of enough, you're being considerate for those who need help, those who are struggling, those who cannot speak for themselves. This is where, a Christ-like figure or an advocate of liberation in any culture or religion comes into play and says, those who cannot fend themselves, we are there for them because our cup is overflowing. It's not because we feel guilted by some myth or some interpretation of religion that says you have to help the poor, you have to give your money, you have to give your last 10% because that's the right thing to do. No, this is more of, if my cup is overflowing because my harvest was good this year, because I was putting in good enough work, then yes, I have extra, I have an abundance. I can then think about considering to share with those who need. You know what I mean? Like, but we're not taught or spoke to like this. So we find ourselves indoctrinated, not only by religious, but social understandings. Society has these beliefs, these notions that we just somehow just go with, like saying, God bless you. No one really knows the history as to why we say God bless you, but it comes from a time where there was such crazy disease. People were dying from sneezing. Believe that. Interesting time where people died from sneezing. It could have been the last sneeze. So when people sneezed and they were still alive, God bless you. Isn't that interesting? So now when you sneeze, let's say you're traveling somewhere and someone says, God bless you. Why? I'm not sick. I'm not on the verge of death. Like I don't have that issue where my sneeze could have been my last. Why do we say God bless you? So going back to what Jasenia was saying, like why do we practice these things without thinking? It's please.
It's like we continue to practice old habits. And then these old habits just become patterns. And then the patterns just become like the normal, the rituals that we don't think about. And so it's accepted, It's like when this idea when people say, okay, and this is specifically for certain religious groups, people that you might see in the street and they want to stop you and they say, Jesus loves you. But do you love me? You can't answer that. And they're not going to say it. They're not going to say, I love you. They'll say, Jesus loves you. But do you love me? If you practice Jesus and all these things, you should love me. You should be able to love me then. And if you don't, then what is the idea of all this then? Like, what are you doing? And I shouldn't have to allow myself to, fall into those kind of notions, those beliefs. Those are your set of beliefs. That goes also with the whole, God bless you and things like that. Like, just like these repetitive actions, these things that come out of just guilt because everyone else is doing it. You don't want to be the elephant in the room, so to speak,
Or be left out, yeah.
or be left out.
Which is a
So
very childlike idea, right? Like it's very what we mean like is it happens at a very young age, this feeling of being left out. Like no one has to teach you it. It's just instinctive. Like humans don't like feeling naturally left out. That's why we group up, we pair up, we have concepts of marriage, which is complicated, but we do couple up, we have relationships and we have families and stuff like that. So just this notion, and Stephen, you brought up even you were feeling alone, which we thought was an interesting prompt because you were trying to make a separation between being alone and feeling lonely. Like you mentioned, you're married, you have a counterpart, significant other. So it's kind of hard to think or imagine that you're lonely. You probably physically have someone around you, but to feel alone, this is a different concept because you could be surrounded by loving people and a family and all this, but inside you, in your mind, in your spirit, in your heart, you feel alone because you don't feel like maybe you're connecting with like-minded or same frequency kind of, people. Please.
is to add into that, right? I thought about the word instead of alone or to add to alone. It's like, are you being fed? Are you full? Are you content?
Yeah,
Kind of thing. So it's like you can have all these things around you or people, but do you truly feel like you're being like seen in a way?
yeah,
Because to be seen, you're not ignored, and so you don't feel alone because you know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
let's like for example, picture a group. So the group can be the community kind of thing, but if you're part of it, or let's say you are in it, but not really, because you're not being seen, you don't feel like you're part of that. Like you might be like for people, like let's say for example, I'm part of a family, but we don't agree on certain things. Like we might be related by blood, but we're so different. And so I feel like I'm alone. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So you can have company and still feel that way.
definitely.
Like there's just still a part of us that we're trying to fill. And sometimes when that is not being held accounted for, like it's always going to feel like you're always going to yearn something.
Yeah.
Something there is missing.
In a way, we talk about this in our recently published book, A Path-Maker, An Unfollowable Path. And we talk about how, this process of going off path, theopoetically or even literally, right? It's different, it's challenging, right? And 9 times out of 10, you're gonna feel alone. This word alone comes up a lot on a path maker's journey. And so it's not easy to embody or accept a path maker archetype, because it entails being more comfortable being alone. You're more comfortable not following trends. You're more comfortable relying on your intuition. You're more comfortable in your own body. You don't feel ashamed or guilty as much. Like all these things are happening simultaneously on a path maker's journey, and we always are trying to prepare people to consider that, you're gonna feel alone. That's why this community even exists. And it's probably existing right now ahead of its time, and that's okay. But when people catch up and they start realizing, when you start to try to claim your individuality and claim back your real true self, you're going to question, is there a community for such people? Is it possible? And public space is attempting to answer that. It's responding to that. What happens when you have, a group of people that are awakening to a capacity or to a frequency of trying to become more self-sufficient, trying to become themselves truly, and you have all these complicated factors such as, your ancestry comes from slavery, you're of color, there's politics and segregation and racism and poverty and all these things. How do you still try to become your true self in the mix of all that? And where do you go to kind of escape it momentarily? Well, that's public space. Like that's this right here, the coming together, the choosing to come together to speak and share and love and respect. You know what I mean? We can all have our different beliefs and perspectives, but we can sit here and share and understand and learn. More importantly, we have to start learning from each other, you know? Please.
This reminds me of that Heyoka story. And if you guys are familiar, obviously I think you guys are with the Heyoka, the Joker. And the story of the old wise man and how he went to visit this community that was like, it was falling apart. Like it was to his last legs, whatever. And at first, this community started with people, like-minded people. They were, they had the same thoughts, ideas, whatever. It was a community. So everyone had something to give. But then the members, most of them, they started to get bored because they started to see it as a job. It wasn't something that they were utilizing to kind of feed themselves and the community in a way to make everyone grow. It was more of what can it just do for me kind of thing. That's how I took it. Anyway, and so the person that started it, they're just like, damn, like this thing is really like what's going on? Like everyone is leaving kind of thing. The place is becoming muddy. The walls are coming down and it's raining. There's flooding. So only some members remain and they stayed, when that was happening. Well, they were seeing everyone leave. Some of them remained. And this old wise man, he comes and he visits, he speaks to this young man that, like he started the group, whatever. And he's like, yeah, like, I don't know what happened kind of thing. And then he's like, well, it's not, it's not like who's there to save or try to like create, like this place to save people or save everyone kind of thing. Is basically you finding the savior within yourself. So having that, you know what I mean? But what he said was what, like it just changed everything for the guy. He was like the old man was leaving and he's like, oh, like you're just gonna leave? Like, do you have something to say? And he's like, well, I'll leave you with this. Um, the savior is among you. And that was it. So then the person took that literal and said, oh my gosh, the person is literally here that's gonna save us. And then he's like, damn, who could it be? Is it so and so? Is it this person that's been indoors? Maybe they're praying so much. Maybe it's them. And then he took the question to, but wait a minute, it might be me. So then that, changes the whole thing. So it's like in communities and things like that, like I feel like that's how we have to see ourselves more than just, idolizing. As with Jesus, as with any kind of figure, you know, that these are things that we need to feed ourselves, and then we get to see everyone else's potential. We all growing, but when we don't see that, because we're so accustomed to traditions and just everything we've been speaking about, we're not going to see the fruit of these things, of the seeds that we're planting.
Yeah, definitely. You made me think of in the Bible mentions this phrase that when one or more are gathered, God is present. And this is an interesting phrase, an interesting statement, if you would. This might be the foundation of what church or religious gatherings are about. In terms of when one person or two or more people come together in like-mindedness, that is the possibility for this kingdom idea, this better world where it's more infused with divine principles and equality and abundance and love, like that can be manifested here now when two or more are gathered. I think that's what the phrase says. Excuse me if we chopped it up, paraphrasing here, but you get the gist of what we're getting at here. Public space cannot be public space if Aaron's the only person that showed up. You know what I'm saying? Like it's weird, like, but when you have people showing up, interacting, that is community, and you have a frequency that has multiple engagements, right? We're in the age of crypto, right? So in terms of like, think about it like a blockchain, right? And if there's only one fucking crypto on that blockchain, what use is that blockchain? Like it's boring, like you're mentioning, like it's only about one. And so when you have a blockchain that has multiple cryptocurrencies, then it has more utility, it has more versatility, it has more inclusion. It's better used, it's more for the people, and so even the theory and the technology of cryptocurrency in itself is rooted in the ideas of liberation. If anyone has already, looked into the early papers that were written in the early 2000s, a lot of people were writing PhD theses on cryptocurrency and blockchain stuff. It's really fascinating how it transcended from these philosophical, social ideas into this digital financial product that we can now, physically, digitally, intertwine with. And interesting enough, public space was born out of a digital space. It doesn't have a physical, real domicile domain, it has a digital domain. And when people digitally gather, public space then appears, but outside of that, we are alone amongst, the 7 billion in the world. Um, and we're scattered because this community, interesting enough, we invest in analytics. So we get to see like who's really engaging with this kind of material. And a lot of people are interested in public space that are on different continents, different countries. And so it's really interesting to see that public space may not be something for the Western culture, but it's definitely something for other cultures that are more prone to oppression, more prone to religious trauma in their everyday. For example, um, in one of the countries that listen to us, they are dominated by Catholicism. So when you kind of put that into perspective and you hear or remember the things we talk about in this space, in this community, it's very affirming. It's very inspirational, encouraging to those who are battling deeper oppression in foreign lands. We're here in America, but we have extended digital family members in public space that are dealing with oppression from Catholicism, from dictatorship, from capitalism on the outer brinks. You know what I mean? Not to mention African countries, like a lot of people naively believe that, poor countries or third world countries, if that even is a term, um, that they don't have internet, they don't have all these things. They have all these things, you know. They just don't have it to the luxury that we have it here in the States. It's packaged differently, you know. But poor people is poor people, right? MLK would support and back that up because that's what the Poor People's Campaign was backed on, was this idea that beyond our physical appearances, our cultural beliefs, our religious beliefs, we are all economically being oppressed, right? And so we are still with that issue today. Every member that is part of the public space community that maybe doesn't speak English as their native tongue knows this very well, you know. But this should be a reminder that there's a lighthouse still casting its light. And there's still hope. There's still people trying and attempting to move forward differently, embracing higher vibrations of acceptance and love. We're not here to shame people, but we've said this many times. If you can forgive yourself and love yourself, then everyone here can do the same. You know what I mean? Like, you're not here to get that outwardly. You're here to affirm that you get it inwardly. You know, there's no messiahs in this space. If anything, we are all our own saviors, like Jasenia said. We can all free our own selves. We're not here to idolize anybody. You know, don't let my doctor title fool anyone. That doesn't really mean anything when we think about it. Just means I read a bunch of books, wrote a decent paper with an argument, and had a practical project behind it that, you know, made sense and sought to reveal things that were being ignored or maybe wasn't acknowledged. So, you know, it just means we've done something to try to research and learn and liberate ourselves and others, but it doesn't make us better. You know, everybody in this space is doing phenomenal things, phenomenal things. You know, just the way this space is, we're very decentralized. So it's kind of hard to point the spotlight at one person or certain people, but know that every person that's part of this space is of high value, you know, like full potential, you know, and we will be here as long as we have air in our lungs to remind you that you guys are incredible and you're doing it. You're paving your own ways. You're becoming a path maker slowly but surely. It takes time. You can't just click and it's on, and it takes time. Decolonizing our minds, deconstructing our minds takes a lot of time and patience, a lot of emotional processing, a lot of crying, a lot of forgiving of real self, you know? Please.
I don't know why, but this came to mind. I really feel like Yeshua, right? He was really trying to decolonize himself and his mind, even to the extent of, because I thought about it, I'm like, even when it comes to ourselves, like we have to, even through silence, when we're silent, it's maybe because we are trying to go into that inner work, trying to learn and, do the things that maybe we didn't get a chance to before because we were so distracted, or we were trying to keep up with things that were not there to really elevate us. And now it's like, I need to wake up. I need to continue going because we do age. Even though with age comes, wisdom, we have experience, but we're not like physical immortal beings. Of course, we transition and our energies will still be present, but to that extent, like thinking about how we see this figure, and the way I see this figure is like someone that was a human being. So just try to place a human being or place this human being to have, you know, their own kind of, or create their own kind of freedoms, to want to educate themselves in a way where they're like, what I'm seeing around me, it ain't working because I'm seeing all these fucked up people, and that hasn't changed. It hasn't changed from when I was young, when I was little, and it hasn't changed now that I'm older. So what is the root of this? We need to, you know, do the, like, in a sense, like the unbinding. Like you have to unveil these things that have been so constrictive, where all you see is just that. No, we need to loosen this knot and really see, like, what are these things that created this? How was this put together? How it was constructed? So the idea of deconstructing, decolonizing ourselves the way that he did for himself. And it's scary. There's like every other kind of figure that has been doing that throughout history. Um, and I think that's why a lot of us, we try to not want to stand out as much, you know, especially if you don't have like the kind of support that does support those kind of things, that might still be thinking of the word, not ashamed of who you are, or like what you're doing and things like that, but really acknowledges you, understands, or tries to understand the same way that we would want to try to understand everyone else and their own beliefs. Because I think there is such thing where you can gather, obviously, like this, like public space. If there's like multi-faith, as long as we understand and know, like, we respect each other's beliefs and spaces. Because at the end of the day, underneath all those things, we're still human.
With that said, the Orpheus myth, right? We started with that. The Orpheus myth. When we see through the lens of winter, right, it teaches us that the journey into the inner abyss, that dark place, is not one of despair, but of potential. Remember that. By embracing this darkness, the darkness inside of ourselves, we prepare for the light, for our higher self, a deeper, truer self waiting to emerge out of all of us. So with that, be kind to yourself.
But thank you so much for everything, for the conversation, and the space to communicate. Thank you. We greatly appreciate that wholeheartedly. Um,
Well, hopefully we
It was
see you
good
in the new
seeing
year.
you.
Yeah,
wait, say that again. That what?
it was good seeing you, and we hope to see you in the new year.
Yes, yes, you will. You definitely will.
All right, well, take care, man. We'll
Be
talk.
safe out there.
All right, I
Yeah.
love you guys. Take care.
Love you too, man.
Love you too.
Hi, Dr. Waldron here again. If you like what you're hearing and what you're hearing is helping you, we encourage you to further support this project by becoming a patron. Join us on Patreon to support public space. As a reminder, this is an online community and it's dedicated to helping individuals who have experienced religious trauma find healing, identity, and connection. Your patronage fuels a safe space where stories are shared, guidance is offered, and journeys of self-discovery unfold. To show my appreciation, we've built a structure of benefits for our patrons. For example, you'll get free ebooks, enjoying a free digital copy of my latest work on healing, metaspirituality, dreams, and self-discovery. You'll get a signed paperback book as a special thank you from us. You also get exclusive content like private podcasts, guided meditations, as well as exclusive between film dialogues that are being hosted once a month. We also offer dream interpretation to help you understand and better clarify what you're dreaming. What messages are hidden behind the unconscious mind? By supporting public space, you're not just joining a community, you're helping create a sanctuary for those reclaiming their spirituality and identity after trauma. Together, we build a brighter, more compassionate future.